In this video we're going to take an initial look at custom lists. Custom lists in SharePoint 365 Online, SharePoint 2016, and what you get out of the box. In a previous video I showed you how to add a custom list simply by going to the cog and then navigating to add an app and then being able to add that custom list, which will come up here on the quick launch. So once you've got your custom list, initially as it's deployed, what the core of SharePoint is an element called content types, and content types control the rows of data and the columns of data that is stored against a particular list type. So this custom list has a particular content type which tells it by default which columns should be associated with this list and then how to store that data. So initially, when you open the page with the custom list, you should see this title, and you very quickly got the ability by clicking new item to be able to add a new item here and save it. You also have this option here, edit list, which gives you this grid view, which we will see in action a bit later on, which will allow you to fill out data very quickly from almost like, if you like, an Excel spreadsheet view of the data contained in this list. Now along the top here you have a number of tabs in the ribbon bar. The most important one is the one that says list, and you have a number of options. You have this quick edit view which takes us back to that grid view that we talked about just a moment ago. You have creative views, so if you want to create new views. Now the current views that are available are stored here. First one is all items, and then if you left click the ellipsis, any other views up to 3 will be displayed here, and then the remainder will be held in the ellipsis and then will come down in this menu bar, and you have the ability then to switch between different views. And the power behind that is that you can show, let's say you have some data that maybe is extremely complicated and you've got 100 columns. You won't be able to see all of that in this screen. Now if you use different views, you can cut that information up into digestible chunks, and then later on, if you have different people that need to view the different sets of information, you can provide those different views to those different groups of people to only show them the necessary information that maybe is relevant to them, or the top key information that they need to be able to see. So that's quite powerful. We'll look at some more examples of that in another video. Around the views, you have the ability to be able to modify views, and we'll do a bit more about that, again along the lines of what I've just talked about. And this one here, creating a column. So if we just wanted immediately to create a column, we could just left click this, and you're opened up with this menu, and the makeup of this menu is simply add a name. So let's say that we were going to store employee information here, so we could add a forename, and we have this option here of a variety of different columns, and each column can store a different type of data. Now this is very important. We've got single line, which is a limited amount of characters. I think it's up to 256 characters. Multi-line, choice, which gives you things like drop-down menus, and a variety of other things. I do believe it's radio boxes and check boxes. Numbers, if you just want numbers only. Currency, time and date. This lookup field is quite interesting. This allows you to pull data stored in another SharePoint custom list into this particular field. So if I had a number of employees' names stored in another table, and I needed to duplicate that information across 5 or 6 other tables, I wouldn't have to want to keep having to type these people's names in. I could use this lookup field and quickly pull that data into whichever table that I wanted to, whichever list stroke table that I wanted to use. Here's your default checkbox, yes or no. Adding people, quite similar to the lookup field, but slightly different in terms of it adds people in terms of the people that are stored within SharePoint, so only people that are actually registered as users within SharePoint. Hyperlinks and pictures, I think that's reasonably self-explanatory. Calculated columns, now this is really important. These allow you, very much like Excel, to be able to run various calculations across rows in a custom list. So that allows you to do calculations such as add, multiply. It also allows you to work with things like booleans and variables. So you're looking for a specific value, and if that value is equal to the value you're looking for, then output something else. And this becomes quite effective when you start to begin to want to automate certain things, and it works very well with workflows. Task outcomes is something that we'll look at later with regards to tasks and the ability to be able to provide people with choices as to what the outcome of an event should be. External data types are to do with business connectivity services. And this one here, managed metadata, is absolutely critical. This is about taxonomy and tagging of data, and that becomes very important later on. So here we have a description. Now the descriptions are quite important because at a later stage, as you start to populate SharePoint, filling in descriptions provide you with extra information about what the column is designed to do. So in this scenario, we're going to put in first name of employee, and required that this column contains information. So this is about validation. Now, you may decide that some columns require information and some columns don't. Clearly this column, because it's the forename of somebody, then you're going to require that it needs information. Enforce unique values. Now in this scenario, this is a forename of somebody. Now you cannot enforce a unique value because there may be many people called John or Jane within the organisation, but in scenarios where you only want a specific item to be returned once, then you would check that. Here's your character count of 255 characters, and then you can set this to be either text or calculated value dependent on what you've chosen. There are also some extra options here with regards to column validation. So you can set things like the first letter must be capital and those kind of things. And here is a user message that would display to help the user understand what they need to do in order to validate that column. So if we quickly click OK here, now here you see we've added our first column into this custom list. So you can continue to add columns here very quickly into this list. Now, in addition to that, along this top bar, there are a number of other settings, such as Alert Me, which will allow us to be able to get an alert on a variety of settings depending if something changes here. So if you're an administrator or you want to keep up with data on this particular list, then these are quite interesting options, and we'll look at some more of that. RSS feed, connect to Outlook. If you've got an Outlook account and you've connected up, then you can have this information pushed down to your Outlook account from this table. You can export this table, this list to Excel. There are a variety of other options with regards to access and project if you wanted to import that information from this table into those at a later stage. And then we've got three quite interesting ones here. List settings, which I'm going to come back to. Share with. Now obviously this lets you understand who have you shared this with, and if you want to share this list with other people that already have maybe access to this site, but you want to share this list to them with them, then here is where you would add it and go through the steps to add that. Workflows. Now this gives you an understanding of what workflows you have running against this list and how those workflows may interact with this list. Now that becomes quite important as we get into more complicated scenarios and we begin to automate data. So we'll touch on that a bit later. And here we have list settings. Now this is probably the most important tab out of all of them here on this ribbon bar. If I click the list settings, it takes me into this view, and there are a variety of options here that are very important, and I'll touch on this in a minute in terms of these options. Here at the top, obviously you've got the list name and you've got the link to the list, and then as we come down we have these columns. Now these columns are, with the exception of this one here, full name, which we've just created, all these other columns, title, modified, created by, modified by, are all created by default when we created the custom list. Now this is all part of the initial content type that is associated with this list, and it tells this list to store this data, these columns, and this data against this list. Now what's interesting is obviously only title is something that we could see. So if we go back, and I'm going to show you a quick way of going back. This is the name here of the list. So if we click on that, this is going to take us back to this initial list and to the interface with the list view. So if we look at clicking on list again, and we look here at modify view, so what we're doing is we're currently in this all items view, and if we modify this view, what we get here is a variety of columns that are available to us out of the box, so we haven't had to do anything here. Notice also that this is the name of the view, all items, so we can change the name of the view if we wanted to. And remember that created by, modified and modified by were in the content types that were available. So if I select them and I click OK, what we're going to see now is those columns now become visible, and certainly if I edit this, they now become available for me to begin to view and work with in this view and in this list. So although in the list settings it controls the initial content types, we can change what is actually seen by the end user through the modified views. So as you add columns here, what will happen, and certainly on the list, they will add columns in here, but if you can't see them, the reason for that is that you need to go back and modify the view in order to be able to see them. So further down here we have a number of other options. Create a column, which is very much what we've just gone through, and if I click on that you'll see that here we have the ability to create a new column. So if I was to create the column surname here, and then require that this contains information, and then here checkbox add to default view. Obviously the default view is the all view and all items view, and we want this to be added automatically so that we don't have to add it. If I uncheck that and say no, I don't want it added, and we click add, notice that we've added the surname here, but when we go back to the view the surname is not available. We can't see it because we said we didn't want it to be added to this default view. If I go back to list and we modify this view, we'll see here that we've got the surname, and if I check it and click OK, you'll see now that it comes out at the end, but it's not really a lot of good to us at the end here. Really what we want is we want it next to this forename. So if we go back and we modify this view, and we see here that it's on position number 7 and forename's on position number 2. So where we want it is we want it on this one, position number 3. Now if I change the number 7 to the number 3, what happens is everything else gets pushed down one number and this number gets added and will come in here. Now we only see this move up when we click OK, and you see now we reposition it back in here, and if I go back to the list, modify view, we see that it moves it back up, and we get to see that information here. So hopefully this was just an initial introduction to custom lists and the beginnings of beginning to add some columns and the initial pages and options that you have around custom lists. We will talk in more depth about creating custom lists and providing and using more interesting solutions in the next set of videos. Thank you very much for watching.